Greetings, Body of Messiah. Mark Quilley here with YHWH'S Assembly in Fort Myers, Florida, bringing you another teaching from Yahweh's laws and commandments. Shabbat Shalom. Praise Yahweh for another Sabbath. I just love Sabbaths. There's just something spiritually that takes place in your life when you keep the Sabbath, something powerful that keeping the first day of the week does not provide. Going to quote unquote church does not provide. And the reason is because it's not his commandments. His commandment is to remember the Sabbath, to keep it set apart. So praise Yahweh for another day. Praise Yahweh for another privilege to bring and share with you Yahweh's laws and commandments. Let's turn to Deuteronomy chapter 28. And what I want to share with you about is Yahweh or Yahshua's punishment. Yahshua's punishment and how that affects our life if we'll use our faith and believe to have received it and then walk in accordance to Yahweh's laws and commandments. So let's start out in Deuteronomy 28, and very familiar verse. It says, "And it shall come to pass, if you'll listen diligently unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim," and that word hearken means to listen and obey. The renewed King James Version, which is what I'm reading out of today, it says, if you'll hearken diligently, not passively or once in a while, but if you will listen and obey the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim. Okay, so that's the bottom line, is if you and I will listen and obey the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command you this day, that Yahweh, when you do this, says that Yahweh, thy Elohim, will set you on high above all the nations of the earth. So the promise of being set high above all the nations of the earth is dependent upon you and I diligently obeying and listening to the voice of Yahweh and to do his commandments. Now, there are times, in just little things, I do a lot of driving, and I remember driving and thinking about going this direction. And I just kind of ignored it and went the way that I normally would go. And come to find out, big traffic jam. And I said, Yahweh, I did it again. I didn't listen to the voice, to your voice, when you were directing me, instructing me to go a different way, and that life would have been much easier because I wouldn't have had to mess around with sitting in traffic. So there are little things that Yahweh will direct you in, instruct you in, lead you by his Spirit in, and if we will diligently listen to them and then obey them, there will be a blessing that will come to us. And then it says, and all these blessings, because you listen and obey his laws and commandments, and when you're new to Torah, start with what you know. If you know to keep the Sabbath, then just keep the Sabbath. You may not know what to do or what not to do on the Sabbath, but all you know to do is stay home or to join a fellowship or watch some teachings on YouTube or study the scriptures or listen to some good Hebraic worship music, which there isn't tons of, and then just do what you know to do. Same way with the feast days. You may not know everything there is, and I don't either, to know everything there is about keeping a feast day. And we have Passover coming up. Do what you know to do. Do what you know to do, and as Yahweh instructs you in the days, weeks, months, and years to come, then add to it. Do more than what you did last year, because you have a greater and you have more understanding. And it says, and all these blessings shall come on you and overtake you. Underline that word, overtake you. Yahweh wants his blessing, his blessings to overtake you. That includes joy. That includes good relationships with friends and family. That includes having intimate relationship with your wife or your husband. That includes health. That includes finances. That includes whatever purpose Yahweh has ordained you to have on this earth. That he wants it to come on you and overtake you if you listen and obey the voice of Yahweh, your Elohim. And then it says, you'll be blessed in the city and blessed in the field, or you'll be increased in the city and increased in the field. If you're not being increased in health, if you're not being increased in joy, if you're not being increased in peace, if you're not being increased in finances, if you're not being increased in things you desire, or ministry, or whatever the case may be, then you need to look at and see if and see where you are not obeying Yahweh's laws and commandments. Because he said, if you listen and obey Yahweh's voice, then he said these blessings will not just come on you, but they'll overtake you. I remember one of the promises concerning tithes and offerings. In Malachi, it says that if you bring your tithes and your offerings into the storehouse, that he not only will rebuke the devourer for your sake, but he'll open up the windows of heaven and begin to pour out. You know, take a pitcher and begin to pour it. That's what he wants to do. He'll begin to pour out so much blessing. That's just not financially, but that's in every area of life, so there's not room enough to receive it. Now, I can tell you, I have not experienced that to the fullness, but I keep giving. I keep giving our tithes and offerings. We keep sowing seed. We keep believing to have received and keep speaking his word concerning the promise for those that are tithers. And part of that is that he'll rebuke the devourer off your body. He'll rebuke the devourer off your blood pressure. He'll rebuke the devourer off your heartbeat, heart rhythm. And I'm using those because those are issues that I deal with. And I continually, and I kind of let that one slip. So I'm going to start applying it specifically, that Yahweh said that when we bring his tithes and offerings into the storehouse, that he would not only rebuke the devourer, so he's rebuking, or in the Hebrew it says, Hasatan, Satan, stop it. That's what rebuke means. And that he will pour out His blessing that there's not room enough to contain it. He'll rebuke high blood pressure. He'll rebuke irregular heartbeat or whatever you might be going through, cancer or sugar diabetes or lupus or allergies or whatever the case. But you and I need to use our mouth. You and I need to use our faith. And we need to first obey his commandment of tithes and offerings, then begin to say, Yahweh, we give you praise, that the devourer is rebuked off of, and then be specific or mention the area that you need the devourer rebuked because somehow he got involved in that area of your life. It may be generational. It may be because of your disobeying Yahweh's laws and commandments at some point in time, or your family disobeying Yahweh's laws and commandments at some point in time. Or it just could be a simple attack of the enemy or an infirmity that the enemy's putting on you to see if you'll accept it. And if you'll accept it and you call it like you say, my high blood pressure, well then you're claiming it. Then you're holding on to it. Then you're accepting it. Something to think about. All right, now you can read the rest of this. And we all know it says, blessed in the city, blessed in the field, blessed coming in, blessed going out. We'll be the head, not the tail. Yahweh will command his blessing upon your storehouse. That's your checking account, your savings account, your retirement account. Your plans for the future, your finances for the future. He will bless it. He will bless it when you obey his laws and commandments. See, it always comes back to obeying Yahweh's laws and commandments. All right, now let's drop down to verse 15 and we'll start getting into what Yahweh's put in my heart. I was going to teach on Yahshua, the Son of Man, but this was quickened to me, so I'll go with what was quickened to me. And it's awesome when you listen to other men and women in the body of Messiah teach on something or share something, and you listen to it and no big revelation goes off, but then a day later or a week later or a month later, then that word is quickened within you by Yahweh's Spirit. Revelation begins to flow. The scriptures begin to flow. And you go, wow. So, and that's what this is. This is a wow teaching. At least for me it is. Verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if you will not listen and obey unto the voice of Yahweh. So if you don't listen and you don't obey the voice of Yahweh, thy Elohim, to observe to do all his commandments, not some of them, not the ones your church or your pastor or Christianity or paganism has told you is still for us today, but the rest has passed away. No, none of it's passed away. The scripture clearly says Yahshua is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Malachi 3 says that Yahweh is the same, and he has not changed. So his commandments have not changed. Just because Yahshua went to the stake and took our sin, our iniquities, and the scripture says, Galatians 3:13, that Messiah has redeemed us from the curse of the law, does not mean that you and I do not need to obey the curse of the law. It just means that the punishment for disobeying the curse of the law was put upon Yahshua, and he's redeemed you from it. Think of it this way. You get a speeding ticket by a policeman. You go to court, and that judge says that case is dismissed. So the punishment that would have normally come with it, maybe it was a $100 fine or whatever, you are free from it. You are free from that punishment. But then you go out and you either speed or you run a red light. Officer pulls you over, gives you a ticket. You go before the judge, and you think you're going to be innocent. Judge says $500 fine. Why? You were redeemed, you thought. You were just redeemed from the punishment of the offense. You were not redeemed from the necessity of obeying the law. Same way spiritually. Yahshua has redeemed us from the punishment that came from disobeying Yahweh's laws and commandments. But we are not redeemed from obeying his laws. We are not redeemed or given permission or given grace or given a freedom to continue disobeying his laws and not expect punishment. What did the Apostle Paul say? That I believe it's Romans 3:23, the wages of sin, and what is sin? Disobeying Yahweh's laws and commandments. The wages of disobeying Yahweh's laws and commandments is death. So unless you turn away from it, unless you repent of it, you will suffer the punishment that we see here in Deuteronomy. And if you study the whole chapter, you will see that these punishments, these curses that will come upon you, you might be able to relate to it. And he says, to observe all his commandments and statutes which I command you this day, that all these curses or punishments shall come upon you and overtake you. So when you ignore the Sabbath, when you ignore and disobey his feast days, when you ignore and disobey, or you've been deceived into thinking you don't need to keep his laws and commandments, then these punishments, these curses, will come upon you. And then it says the opposite of what obeying Yahweh's laws and commandments brings. It says, cursed shall you be in the city, cursed or punished shall you be in the city, cursed or punished shall be the fruit of your body. That's your health, that's your children. The fruit of your land, your business. It says, cursed shall you be when you come in, punished shall you be 24/7, basically. It says, Yahweh shall send upon you cursing, vexation, rebuke, in all that you set your hand unto for to do, until you be destroyed. It says, Yahweh shall make the pestilence cleave unto you, until it consumes you. Yahweh shall smite you with consumption, with fever, flu, colds, with inflammation, arthritis, with an extreme burning. Thy heaven that is over your head shall be brass, meaning you're not going to receive answers to your prayer. Yahweh shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust, meaning you won't be able to grow the vegetables and the fruits that you want to. Verse 27, Yahweh shall smite you with the botch of Egypt, with hemorrhoids, with the scab, with the itch, whereof thou canst not be healed. Yahweh shall smite you with madness, confusion, Alzheimer's, blindness, heart issues, and you can just keep reading all this. Well, all these things are punishment. You read all the way to the end of the chapter. They are punishments for disobeying Yahweh's laws and commandments. So all the health issues, all the financial lack issues, and I know there are a lot of people, and I see it on Facebook or on pages, Facebook type pages, people that, are in desperate need of, as we turn to Isaiah 53, that are in desperate need of finances, and they are struggling big time. And many, not all, but many times, in many cases, I remember those same individuals saying they do not believe that tithing is necessary or is of today, so they don't do it. And then they find themselves in financial straits. And the two are connected. I remember years ago, we went to a church, and this was when we were still in Christianity, and they taught during the tithes and offerings about giving and receiving. And so for, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever it was, my wife and I, we just kept hearing the word, hearing the word, hearing the word, hearing the testimonies, reading it for ourselves. And then finally faith came, and we stepped out in faith and gave our first tithe. And our first tithe was $100. Now, at that time, Linda and I were a week to 2 weeks behind on our bills. We barely had enough food to eat. If it wasn't for my sister Patty, who we went over to their house on Sunday and spent the whole day with their family watching football. Linda would go shopping with Patty, my sister, and they would have a blast, and I'd be with my nephews, and we'd play basketball and throw the football around, watch football game, or whatever the case may be. Had a blast. My nephew Bruce would make nachos for a snack or some other snacks till supper time. And then when we left, my sister loaded us up with 2-3 meals of leftovers. And if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have survived it. At that time, we were not tithers. But when we began to give that first tithe of $100, we were so pumped we couldn't wait for offering time. From that moment on, I don't know how it happened, I just know it happened, that we became even in all our bills. We were no longer past due. And we began to have enough. We began to have enough. Why? He said it was a commandment, Malachi 3, that if you will bring your tithes and offerings into the storehouse, where you're being fed and nourished spiritually, that he would rebuke the devourer, that he would put a stop to the work of Hasatan in your life, and that he would open up the windows of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there's not room enough to receive it. Tithing began to work for us in the 80s when we began to do it. But we had to step out in faith and obey Yahweh's laws and commandments. And when we did, the devourer was rebuked. And from that time on, we never lacked. We may have gone down to zero in the checkbook, but we didn't lack for anything. When we needed food, it was there. When we needed money, it was there. When we needed to pay our rent, our mortgages. There's only one time I was past due on a mortgage, and that was, it got lost in the mail. And so I still had to pay a late fee, but that was the only time. All the other times, Yahweh has made a way where there seems to be no way. And as we have come into Torah and we keep obeying Yahweh's laws and commandments and seeking to increase in obeying Yahweh's laws and commandments, he keeps pouring out his blessing. He keeps pouring out his blessing. Increase more and more and more. And so if Yahweh will do that for us, he will do that for you. And I remember hearing people how their houses were paid off supernaturally, how their cars were paid off supernaturally. Now that has never happened for us. That has never happened for us. But Yahweh made a way for us. It was different than for them. I used to get discouraged. Why doesn't that happen for us? We're declaring that our house is debt-free. Well, our house is debt-free now. But it didn't happen that way. Our car is debt-free now. It's a 12-year-old car, but it's still debt-free, and it's still running, and it's still in good shape. Why? I believe it's because of obeying Yahweh's laws and commandments and he's faithful to do it. So if you're one of those that have been taught, because we don't have a temple, you're not required to obey, to bring your tithes and offerings into the storehouse where you're being fed, then you've been taught wrongly, because it still applies, because the verse is right before it says, I am Yahweh and I change not. I change not. Now we don't have a physical temple. We give it to where we are being fed. If for some reason you don't have a specific place, then find somebody in need and bless them with your tithes and offerings. All right, let's just continue. So in Isaiah 53, something that came to me today, this morning, as I read this. In verse 1, it says, Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of Yahweh revealed? For he, Yahshua, is who it's speaking about. So I'm going to put Yeshua's name in there, or Yahshua's name. For Yahshua shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground, and he has no form of comeliness. And when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. Yahshua, is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. Yahshua was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely Yahshua has borne our griefs, and Yahshua has carried our sorrows. He has borne our sicknesses and carried our pains, is what it says in the Hebrew. But Constantine's Christianity, Catholicism, changed it, just like they changed, Yahweh's name to Lord, Yahshua's name to Jesus. But it says, surely Yahshua borne our sicknesses, carried our pains, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of Yahweh, and afflicted. Yahshua was afflicted or punished because of us breaking and not keeping his laws and commandments. Then it says, verse 5, but Yahshua was wounded for our transgressions, our breaking the Torah. He was bruised for our iniquities, our sinfulness. The chastisement or the punishment that we deserved, he took so that we could have his peace, his shalom. And shalom means wholeness, soundness, completeness, nothing missing, nothing broken, health, prosperity. He took our punishment so that we could have his prosperity, wholeness, nothing missing, nothing broken. Something's missing from your body, something's broken in your body. He took it. That punishment he took, so that with his stripes, because of his stripes, because of his wounds, we are restored to normal. Healing always references being restored to normal. In Acts 10:38, when it says Yahweh anointed Yahshua of Nazareth with his spirit and with his power, and he went about doing good, bringing healing to all those that are oppressed of the devil, he restored them to normal. Every healing, every miracle you see in the scriptures is a restoration of being restored to normal. That's what Yahshua did. Yahshua was punished. Yahshua was punished with our punishment. Yahshua, however you want to pronounce it, was punished And he willingly went to the stake. And as we're, a month or so away from Passover, understand that he was the Passover lamb that was sacrificed on the stake, punished, beaten, crucified for your and my disobeying Yahweh's laws and commandments, and for our wholeness, so that by his wounds we can be healed. And then Galatians 3:13 says that Messiah, Yahshua, redeemed us from the punishment of the law. He redeemed us from the punishments of the law. Everything we read, and even things we didn't read that are in Deuteronomy 28, verses 15 through the end of the chapter, all those curses, all those punishments, Yahshua took upon himself. Now, James says in chapter 1 that faith without obeying the Torah is useless. Faith without obeying Yahweh's commandments is useless. Or faith without works is dead, is how some versions say it. So faith, believing that Yahshua, took all your sin and your sickness, without obeying Yahweh's laws and commandments, will not produce any fruit in your life. And I know that some people have been healed standing on those verses, and they didn't obey Yahweh's laws and commandments. Now Yahweh, he pours out rain upon the just and the unjust. And yes, Yahweh has blessed people that did not obey his laws and commandments, because that's who Yahweh is. He will bless those that are even heathens. He will even heal those that are not obeying his laws and commandments when he has a purpose in it. He is merciful. But when you come to an understanding of his laws and commandments, you see that he said we need to obey his laws and commandments. And if you want to be guaranteed healing, guaranteed wholeness, we need to be a people that obey his laws and commandments. Now remember, Yahshua said in Matthew 7 that many people healed in his name, done miracles in his name, cast out demons in his name, and then Yahshua said, I never knew you. Depart from me, you lawless ones. Why did he say that? Even though they perform miracles. Even many people that are Christians today that in their ministries, they perform miracles. They've experienced miracles. They've performed and experienced prosperity. But they don't obey his commandments. They look at it like it's not relevant. Or if they do, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine, because Yahshua redeemed them. And because he redeemed them, they don't need to. That is so inaccurate. And you will experience at the end of your life him saying to you, if you don't turn away from lawlessness, and that's what sin is, that he will say to you, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, you workers of lawlessness, you workers of Torahlessness. You taught people not to obey my laws and commandments. Get away from me. That's what he's going to say. And we need to realize this. And we need to come back to obeying Yahweh's laws and commandments. True revival is, or true outpouring of Yahweh's Spirit. And you can see that in Acts chapter 2. They said, what shall we do to Peter? He said, repent. Turn back to Yahweh and his laws and commandments. And then it says, and they were all, or I don't know about all, but they were baptized in the name of Yahshua. 3,000 men were added to the kingdom. Why? Because true revival, true outpouring is turning back to Yahweh's laws and commandments. It doesn't matter. Everything else that happens in that type of a meeting that man calls revival, which there's nothing in the scripture that has the word revival in it. No matter what happens in there, you may feel blessed. You may experience great joy. But if you don't turn back to Yahweh's laws and commandments, it's going to be fruitless. It's going to do nothing for you. Now, as I woke up this morning, Yahweh's Spirit gave me this on how to apply Yahweh's punishment to our life. Now, I put it on Facebook. I put it on Twitter. I put it on other social media websites. And you just need to apply it to your situation, to the needs you have, because I know there are people, just like myself, that are suffering in some area of their life in their physical body, or maybe in their mental state. And Yahshua took that punishment. And know that depression is a curse and an infirmity and a punishment for breaking Yahweh's laws and commandments. Sickness, every sickness and disease is a curse, it's not a blessing, is a punishment for breaking Yahweh's laws and commandments. Nowhere will you find in the scriptures, when they came to Yahshua to seek healing or deliverance, that he did not provide it for them. He said no to a couple people, to a Canaanite woman. He said no, and then they pursued, and then he changed his mind and released healing and deliverance to them. So we need to be a people that obeys Yahweh's laws and commandments. Now, this is what Yahweh's Spirit gave me, and I would encourage you, go to my Facebook page, Mark Pulley, or Yahweh Yahshua Assembly, and you can see this written down, and then I would pray this over myself, and I'm going to do it for myself daily. Remember, in Proverbs 4:20 through 22, it says Yahweh's words, his commandments, are like medicine to our flesh. So when you pray his word, his laws and commandments, when you obey his laws and commandments, when you listen to his laws and commandments, it will be just like medicine to your flesh. And remember, just in the natural, when a physician gives you some medicine and you take it, it will begin to bring healing to your flesh. Now, if it doesn't, usually the physician will increase the dosage, and then prayerfully it works in bringing healing to your flesh. All right. Yahshua was wounded for my transgressions. This is what we need to pray. This is what we need to say. Yahshua was bruised for my iniquities, and the chastisement or punishment was upon Yahshua, so I could have shalom, wholeness, forgiveness, with and because of Yeshua's wounds and the blood that flowed from his wounds. And because of Yeshua's wounds, I am healed, and I'm applying this to myself, so you can put in here whatever infirmity you may have, or whatever creative miracle you may need. You may have a limb missing. You may have had organs taken out of your body. I remember my brother had to have I forget what it's called, but he has a colostomy bag. Well, that's an organ taken out. That can be reversed because of the wounds that Yahshua went through, the punishment he went through for your healing. All right, because of Yeshua's stripes, I am healed of high blood pressure, hypertension, and an irregular heartbeat. The punishment for my disobeying his commandments, the punishment that brought sickness and disease upon myself was put upon Yahshua. The high blood pressure, the hypertension, the irregular heartbeat, Yahshua took upon himself as he was being punished for me instead of me. And by or with Yeshua's stripes or wounds, I am healed of high blood pressure, of an irregular heartbeat, the transgressions, the iniquities, the disobeying Yahweh's laws and commandments brought the punishment of heart disease, and Yahshua took it upon himself on the stake so that I could be forgiven and healed. I am redeemed of the punishment of the law by Yahshua. Remember, I believe it was Joel, chapter 2, he said that we are to say, we are the redeemed of Yahweh, and we need to say so. We are redeemed of, and then fill in the gap. I am redeemed of an irregular heartbeat. I am redeemed of high blood pressure. I am redeemed of hypertension, or whatever else is going on in my body. There are many punishments we suffer. When Yahshua took them so that we could be healed, we've accepted them. We may be taking medicine, and because the medicine is, put those symptoms down where we can function fairly well, we've just accepted them, and many times it's without realizing that we've accepted it. We've accepted financial lack. We've accepted our limitation financially. And we shouldn't do that, because we are redeemed, and Yahshua said in John 10:10, I came to give you life and to give it to you more abundantly, or more than enough. He wants you to have more than enough. He wants your cupboards, your refrigerator, your checking account, your savings account, your finances, your clothes, for you to have more than enough. He wants you to have more than enough shoes, more than enough shirts, more than enough blouses, more than enough pants, more than enough dresses. He wants you to have an abundance. And when you study that out, that's what John 10:10 means when it said he came to give us abundant life. Research it. Look it up for yourself. We need to believe it. We need to receive it. But we also need to make sure that we are listening diligently with the intent of obeying Yahweh's laws and commandments. And that includes the commandment of tithes and offerings. You know, Yahshua says, if we do not forgive, we won't be forgiven. That's a commandment. You can say all day long that you are redeemed, that Messiah has redeemed you from your sin, but if you're not forgiving, you're not forgiven. In the same way, if you're not tithing, if you're not giving offerings to the body of Messiah and to the place that Yahweh has called you to worship and to receive spiritual enlightenment from, then the devourer will not be rebuked and the windows of heaven will not be opened. You can think all day long you don't need to do it, but nonetheless, it's still a commandment. And it's just as much of a commandment as if you don't forgive, you won't be forgiven. Also, we need to refuse to accept Hasatan putting these punishments on us when our Messiah Yahshua redeemed you from them. And again, he did not redeem you from the necessity of obeying the commandments. He redeemed you from the punishment. And if you ask him to forgive you, he will forgive you. But if you go right back and keep living that lifestyle, you're not forgiven. That punishment and that curse will come back. He suffered for you, for me, so that you and I could be healed by Yeshua's wounds in the power of Yahweh's name. Yahweh, and this is real important, don't forget to give Yahweh praise, to give Yeshua praise. Hasatan, and this is what you need to do, you need to command Hasatan to take these punishments that he has illegally put upon your body for those that are complete Torah observant, Yahweh's laws and commandment believers. And command him to take them and to get out through the name of Yeshua and through his blood sacrifice. Yeshua was punished for me, so I am forgiven, and I am redeemed from hypertension and heart disease, and I am restored as if I never sinned or was punished or cursed because of disobeying Yahweh's laws and commandments. Hallelujah. And then you need to resist any of those infirmities. You need to resist any of Hasatan's attempts to keep you under those curses, under those punishments, under those symptoms, in the power of Yahweh's name and through the blood sacrifice and through the sacrifice of the work of the stake that he did on your behalf. And we need to break, and we need to say it, I break this hypertension, this heart disease off my body in the power of Yahweh's name. And Yahweh, I praise you that because I'm a tither, because I obey your laws and commandments, and because mostly Yahshua took my punishment and bore this hypertension, this heart disease, or whatever you may be going through, by his wounds, by the blood he shed as a sacrificial lamb on the stake for me, I am healed in the power of Yahweh's name. And Yahshua, we give you praise for being, we give you praise for being the sacrificial lamb for my sin and my punishment. And Yahweh, we love your laws and instructions. We desire to live according to your Torah, according to your law, according to your instructions, no matter whatever it says.
Hallelujah.
It doesn't matter what it says, and it doesn't matter what we've been taught. We cannot disagree with Yahweh's instructions. If you do, you will not receive his promises, and you will keep suffering. And so I want to encourage you that Yeshua's punishment, what he went through on the stake, was to redeem you, not just from your sin, and to lead you back to obeying his laws and commandments, but it was also to heal you, to deliver you, and that he would perform whatever creative miracle you may need, whatever financial miracle you may need, whatever deliverance miracle you may need, whatever restorational miracle you may need. He accomplished it on the stake for you. And all you and I need to do is receive it by faith and then begin to obey his laws and commandments. Begin to follow his Torah. Begin to follow his instructions. Start off in the beginning and learn what his instructions are. Learn what his commandments are. And then step out in faith and begin to obey them. And just keep doing it. Yes, it may not work overnight. It may not work in a month. But if you'll keep doing it, it will produce fruit. Linda and I, our house wasn't paid off and we weren't financially secure overnight or even in 10 years. It took quite a while, many years of just continually obeying Yahweh's laws and commandments, and then it worked. And it only began to really abound when we came to Torah. So obeying his commandments is key. Keeping the Shabbat is key. Doing everything you know to do in the Torah is key. So until next time, Yahweh bless you. Yahweh heal you. Yahweh make you whole. Yahweh open the eyes of your understanding concerning his instructions. Obey all his commandments. Be strengthened in the power of his name. Be healed in the power of his name. Be delivered in the power of his name. And turn back to his laws and commandments. Turn back to his laws and commandments. Look for areas that you have not been walking in that he says is a commandment of Yahweh. So you can connect with us at YahWH'Assembly.com is our website, or on Facebook, or on any other social media site. This is Mark Pulley saying unto you, Shalom, shalom from the people of Yahweh Assembly, Yahweh Yahshua Assembly in Fort Myers, Florida. Be blessed wherever you are in the power of Yahweh's name.